Hey, how's it going, AP students? So we are now in our vocab for Chapter 5, which is focusing on both classical India and China. And let's start with the first word in your vocab section, actually words, which is Vedas and Upanishads. So the Vedas, you need to know that the Vedas are very important in India, that they were written in Sanskrit, and they are the most ancient texts of Hinduism. So these texts were viewed as written by very ancient writers who give the wisdom that is passed on in Hinduism. Those are the Vedas. Very quick definition. Now the Upanishads are some of the later Vedas, some of the last written Vedas that we know of. And they focus on Brahman or Atman and the soul. And a lot of basic Hinduism comes from the Upanishads, which gives a lot of the philosophy of Hinduism. So associate those with Hinduism and India. A quick look at our first two words. The Mahabharata is one of two major epics or huge stories that are told in Hinduism. It is a huge story that is fundamental to the Hinduism religion. That is the Mahabharata. And next I'm going to give you a major piece we'll need to know from the Mahabharata. The Bhagavad Gita is, I'm probably saying that incorrectly, I apologize. That is a part of the Mahabharata. And one of the major parts of that story is there is a war between two families that is going on. And in that story, a hero, Arjuna, who in his caste in Hinduism is a warrior. He is supposed to fight. And he's supposed to fight, but he doesn't want to go to war because he doesn't want to fight against his cousins, against his own blood, his own family. But he is spoken to by Krishna, who could be seen as a god in Hinduism. But in Hinduism, there's a belief that Brahman is the top god of all gods, and that Krishna would be kind of like an avatar or part of God coming down to speak to Arjuna. So Krishna speaks to Arjuna and says that you need to fight. You are a warrior. That is your caste. It's not your decision to decide whether to fight or not to fight. You have to follow your Dharma or your duty. So follow your duty and go and fight. The main purpose of this is that everyone is believed to follow their caste, follow their job, what they are supposed to do, and stay with that job. And that is the Bhagavad Gita, which is part of the Mahabharata, which is an epic story that is told in Hinduism, passed down to generation to generation. So I mentioned Brahma. Brahma is God in Hinduism, or even like everything. Everything is part of Brahman in Hinduism. So Brahman is like the main god, which is why many people would call Hinduism, some say it's polytheistic, has many gods like Krishna, Vishnu, and other gods. Some would say that Hinduism is monotheistic because Brahman is the big god and all the other gods are part of Brahman. So Brahman, you need to know, is everything, or everything's part of Brahman, or the main god that exists in Hinduism. You'll see Brahman often with many faces, and this can be interpreted as that Brahman can show different faces to different people when Brahman ever makes an appearance as another god. We'll talk more about that in class, but know that Brahman is the main, big, huge god in Hinduism. Dharma is your duty, your job, what you are supposed to do. In Hinduism, you're supposed to follow your duty. As far as like for the caste system, if you're into a job and you're into a category, that is what you're supposed to worry about in this lifetime. You can be reincarnated. If you move up in the system, in a caste system, to a different position, you then follow your Dharma in that position. So if you're a warrior and you were really good, you might be born as a Brahmin or a priest in the next life, and you're supposed to follow a different Dharma or a different duty. So in this life, what are you supposed to do? That is your Dharma. There's a bonus word this week. If this word shows up on the quiz and you get it right, you're going to get extra points. Okay? So it is Ramayana. Feel free to write that down. Ramayana. Ramayana is the second major epic in ancient Hinduism. In Ramayana, there's a king, Rama, who is a major king, and his love of his life, Sita, is taken away from him. And he has to travel and go on all these adventures. Part of it involves like a monkey that travels with him, but he has to find his wife, and they are eventually reunited. But it's an epic tale that's really long, and it's a fundamental part of Hinduism, and that's called Ramayana. And again, there'll be a bonus I'll explain later if you get this one on the vocab test. An ascetic is a wandering teacher, often a wandering religious teacher who is believed to have some closer connection with God and the spiritual world. This is being brought up because Buddha was an ascetic for a while, a person who traveled from place to place. Oftentimes these people will suffer and not eat very much and just kind of live off what they can have around them. And that is an ascetic, which is important in Buddhism because Buddhism was an ascetic teacher and wanderer, religious figure, for a while of his life. Enlightenment is being kind of like woken up to what's around you, or like a light goes off and you can suddenly see everything around you. There's spiritual enlightenment, which is enlightenment connecting you to God. There's intellectual enlightenment connecting you to all the science and everything that's around you. We're going to use enlightenment in this chapter to talk about Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama. So the Buddha reached enlightenment in his life, sitting under a tree, and suddenly was able to grasp the answer of this life and beyond. And that's how we will see the word enlightenment when it comes up in our text. The Four Noble Truths. These are fundamental to Buddhism, and you are supposed to follow these Four Noble Truths to gain enlightenment. And if you look at the word that's repeated here over and over again, they involve suffering. That life is going to have suffering, and there's a cause for your suffering, and there's an end to suffering. And to get over suffering is basically to stop desiring things. If you stop wanting things, you will stop suffering. And you get those by following the Eightfold Path, which is a way to get yourself to stop suffering. And if you can do that, you can reach enlightenment. Reincarnation is the belief that when you die, that you will come back and live again in a new body, possibly even as a different kind of animal or human being. In Hinduism, the belief is that there's constant reincarnation and that your soul, or your Atman, your soul, will come back and live another life and keep living and keep living and keep living until you reach the universal soul. So reincarnation is the belief that we keep coming back, our Atman, our soul will keep coming back and live lives, and that we can move up or we can move down. And the highest level in reincarnation in Hinduism would be that of a Brahmin or of being a priest. That would be the highest level of still being on this planet. And eventually, when the highest level, I should say, the highest level of reincarnation, I'm making this confusing now, is that your soul will leave your body and join the universal soul, and you will be released from this world. Arabic numbers is basically the numbers we use today. But these kind of numbers, you see, look a little bit different in Arabic today. But these numbers originated in India, not in Arabia. They originated in India, where they were first made as a 10-base number system. Now, if you're like, 10-base number system, everybody uses that. The Romans didn't. They used Roman numerals, which look much different. So this is a 10-base number system, originated in India. Then it spread to the Arab world, where when Europeans saw them, because they were in the Arab world, they thought they were Arabic numbers. So these are numbers that are used mostly today. And again, these are used today. They're making math much easier to do, especially algebra and more advanced math. I mean, try doing multiplication in Roman numerals once and see how that goes. And these are Arabic numbers. Filial piety is a belief in Confucianism, which is having a very high amount of respect for your elders, especially your male elders. What it means is that you are supposed to show a very high level of respect, reverence, and even ancestor worship towards your elders and when they die. See, the symbol for filial piety here in Chinese literally looks like one person, the younger person, carrying the older person. It is a high level of respect that's supposed to be shown in Confucianism to make the society go well, that we will honor and respect our elders as we move on in life. The civil service examination. This was used in China by the Qin dynasty and then by the Han dynasty in classical China as a way to get well-qualified people into government jobs, what we would call a bureaucracy. How did you get well-qualified people? Well, instead of it just being by who you were related to, who you knew, it meant actually having an exam or a test. And those with the best test scores got the best job. This was also heavily valued in Confucianism as a way of educated people being able to take a test, follow Confucius law on the test civil service examination, and the Han dynasty would be based a lot on Confucianism, where they could take this test and they could use that to get government jobs in the bureaucracy in China. It was used in the Qin dynasty, but even more in the Han dynasty when they adapted Confucianism. Rock and pillar edicts are basically like laws that are written for everyone to follow. It is basically order by the king or order by the emperor. In this chapter, we're going to look at the Edict of Ashoka, which is a lot like the Edict of Milan. They're both edicts. Although, I'm not sure whose edict was bigger. Maybe I do know whose is bigger. Anyway, so what was I talking about again? Oh, yeah. The Edict of Ashoka was very important because after the Battle of Kalinga, what this did was this actually established that there would be non-violence in the Mauryan Empire that Ashoka was running as he became a Buddhist. And these non-violent laws were posted all over India, which actually made, the country stop fighting. And Ashoka did this after having a very bloody battle at Kalinga. He made his Edict of Ashoka, and the rock and pillar edicts are basically things that were shown so everyone could see them, and they could see that who was in charge and who had the laws. Again, similar, Edict of Milan, which was also used in Rome, or the Edict of Toleration, which is when Cyrus let the Jewish people come back to live in the land of Israel in the Persian Empire. So rock and pillar edicts. Pansanika is basically the peace in China. Now, this can be brought up during our time period in the Han dynasty, how the Han were able to rule China for 400 years with a consistent government where people who were living in China were living for the most part in peace under an established, strong, centralized government. You'll see this Pax word come up a lot, like Pax Romana, the Roman peace, and now you'll see Pax Sinica, which is basically the Chinese peace, or an era where life was pretty stable and you lived pretty well. This will come up in Mongolia too a little later on. But this basically means in China during the Han dynasty, there was a stable government and it was peaceful if you were an average person living there. Districts and provinces. This is basically a way to break up a state. What I mean by state is an empire, a civilization, a country. It's a way to break it up, like Minnesota is a state. That would be kind of like a province or a district. Just a way to divide up an empire into many lands or a country into many different lands where you can run it with local government or bureaucrats. So breaking it up, cutting it up in little sections so it's easier to run. Those are districts and provinces. Indian Ocean sea lanes. This was a very big trade network that opened up in the Indian Ocean, right here, that in this era, 600 to 600, will begin with traders coming all the way from as far as basically Europe, Africa, to India, China, and this will become big during the era of 600 to 600. From 600 to 1450, it will become even bigger and will be a way for many civilizations to trade goods, culture, and ideas back and forth. We're going to have a second video for the rest of the vocab words because I can only tape for 15 minutes. And that should be also linked on the website. So I'll see you in a few minutes.